Scrolling through the r/mk subreddit, you're bound to see keyboards worth more than your entire PC setup. And then you go on YouTube and, well, yeah. But today I'm going to show you how you can actually get a pretty decent custom mechanical keyboard for much less than what most people think. Let me introduce you to the LTC NB681 Nimbleback Wired 65. Oh my god. This title is way too long on Amazon, but basically your new best friend when it comes to the bang for the buck performance in the world of compact mech boards. The biggest standout feature of this board is that it is Hotswap, which is pretty unbelievable for this price. Going as low as $39.99 right now, this board is a steal in my opinion. I actually didn't even notice that I bought the board with res and wasted $10. Of course, there are some drawbacks at this price point, but I'll go over those later. If you are new to the custom mech scene, you may be a bit confused about some of the terms I use in this video, and I will try to explain all of them, but I will also have a great video linked in the description made by Teha Types, which explains all the components of a mechanical keyboard in detail. I highly recommend watching him if you want to know more after watching this video. So yeah, as I mentioned before, this board is Hotswap, meaning you can easily take out any of the switches under the keycaps on the board and replace them or modify them. Usually you would have to use a soldering iron and solder the switches to secure them on the PCB, but Hotswap removes the need for this and practically anyone of any intelligence can modify their board, and I'm proving it with this video. As you can see, this board does come with RGB if you're into that. We are better than that here, so I'm actually going to cover the RGB completely by the end of this video. Anyways, let me stop talking and let me show you how this board sounds with the switches it came with. Alright, so as you can tell, yeah, they don't sound amazing, and that alone should give you a pretty good reason to lube your switches. My left shift switch has so much ping, I actually thought I broke it while I was doing this typing test. Oh, and I forgot to mention, these boards come with Huano switches, I think it's called. And I've never heard of that before, so take that as you will. Alright, so in order to modify these switches, what we need to do is just take these out of the board and first get our switch, throw them in the trash. Just do it, trust me. You're going to be replacing these weird switches with some Gateron yellows I found on Amazon for $15 in a pack of 90, which is actually a pretty good deal. And Gateron yellows are known to be one of the best for a budget build, and that's definitely what we're going for, since you normally see most people spending hundreds of dollars on their builds while you can laugh at them while their wallets are crying. Gateron yellows are linear switches, which mean they have no tactile bump as seen with tactile switches. I don't really have a preference between tactiles or linears, and it's really up to you which ones you prefer. I built my other board with tactiles, but I'm going to try linears this time. Stock, they are pretty good. They actually are pretty smooth. I'm pretty used to having scratchy switches, so I was actually pretty surprised when I got these. But we're still going to be modifying them because, well, I mean, it's a custom mechanical and, I mean, it's a Hotswap PCB, so why not? Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to explain how to modify and lube your switches. Most people start with lubing their stabilizers, which I'll talk about after this, but since I already made the script up to this point, I might as well just talk about it now. So, in order to make your switches feel like heaven, you're going to need a few tools. You're going to need a brush to apply the lube, a switch opener, a lube of your choice. In my case, I actually chose Super Lube, since we aren't Teha Types here and I don't got money like that. But if you do have Crytox 205 grade 0, then I highly recommend you use that. And you should also grab some switch films, since they will make your switch sound more full and overall just much better. You're going to need a keycap puller and a switch puller. The one that comes with this board isn't all that great, but it works, I guess. I picked up a 2-in-1 puller from Amazon that has a keycap puller and a switch puller on it, and it was pretty good, so I recommend that if you not have a keycap or a switch puller already. Also, a switch stem holder is optional and makes lubing the stems easier and saves your fingers from getting lube all over them, but it's not required. So lubing your switches actually isn't that hard, it just takes a long time. It will take you a few hours, but there really isn't a rush unless you only have like one day to do it. It is definitely worth your time though, trust me. So take your switch and align the two ridges with the ones on the switch opener and push down. The entire switch should come apart and you can remove the top housing, switch stem, spring, and bottom housing. You will want to begin by coating your brush in some lube and applying it to the two ridges on each side of the inside of the bottom housing. The key with lubing is that less is more, so I only put a bit on my brush and coat about 3 times on each side, of my brush and repeat for the other side. I will then lube the center of the bottom housing and twist my brush a bit to coat as evenly as I can. Then we move on to the spring. Usually most people will use bag lubing for this, which means that they will take apart all the switches they need to lube and remove the springs from all of them and drop them in a bag with some lube and shake them. This can speed up your process by a lot, and I actually recommend you do this because it can speed your process up by quite a lot. But I actually didn't do this because I actually lubed all of my switches before this video and I forgot to film it, but also I'm just kind of crazy, so yeah. So what I did was I took my spring and my brush and just twisted around the spring, coating it evenly. I will then coat the bottom and then place it onto the bottom housing. I will then pinch the top to stop it from moving too much and then coat the sides and then finally the top. Sometimes the spring will fall off, so if you're following my steps, just make sure to pinch the sides when you're coating the top of the spring, because while I was lubing before, some of the springs would just decide to jump right out of the housing and onto the floor, and I basically would not be able to find them. So yeah, don't be me and just either bag lube your springs or just be really careful. Next is the switch stem. If you have a switch stem holder like I mentioned before, now is the time to use it. If you don't, just hold the end of the stem with your fingers and evenly coat all of the sides of the stem. You might hear about not coating the legs of the stem, which are the long parts that stick out, but if you're using a linear switch like me, you do not have to worry about that. If you are using a tactile switch, you may want to avoid lubing the legs, but it is entirely up to you as it can reduce the tactility of your switch. After this, if you're using switch films, you want to put them around the edges of your bottom housing. Just drop it in with the side with the gap facing the back of the switch. I used up all my switch films, but you will know if you did it wrong if your switch is struggling to go down when you push on it. If you don't have films, then just put on the top housing and press down and it should click into place. Usually the side with the logo is the same side where the legs of the stem are facing. And just repeat this 68 times and you're done lubing your switches. Congrats, you've just done the most tedious part of customizing a keyboard. Now let's move on to the stabilizers, which aren't too bad I think, but on this keyboard they are pretty bad stock, and the mods I did aren't the best, and it doesn't sound perfect, but to me it's good enough as a beginner. Okay, so let's take a look at these stabilizers on this board. So stabilizers, better known as stabs in the community, are really important to mod as well. They are what keep the long keys on your keyboard from wobbling around like crazy. Most boards come with pretty bad stabs, so if you want to keep your keyboard sounding the best it can, I highly recommend you mod them. It's honestly not that hard, but in order to do it right, you will need a few other tools. You will, of course, need your brush again. You will need some sort of tweezers to get the stabs off. Also, I recommend some dielectric grease to apply to the wire of the stab, and either some Super Lube or Krytox 205 grade 0 for the housing of the stem. Like I said before, I am broke, so I only had Super Lube, so if you do have these tools, I am 100% sure your board will sound much better than mine. Fabric band-aids are optional to do the well-known band-aid mod in the community. If you want to reduce the sound your stabs make when you use them, I recommend you do this. Just have some scissors ready to cut them up into small pieces to place under the stabilizers. Since I'm not great at explaining all of this, I will have a video below explaining how to do all of this with your stabilizers, and I highly recommend you watch it since I don't have the lighting or the resources to do this at the moment. I did actually do this to my keyboard, but I did it off camera since I couldn't really get a good angle to record it, so you have to believe me. So after modding my stabs and switches, let's take a look at another component I have here today, my keycaps. I picked these up from Amazon for about $30 and I think they would look great on this board, although there is a problem with them and you'll notice it when I put them on. Now we can take off the switches and replace them with the loop Gateron yellows. And then, to top it off with our new keycap set. And that's pretty much it. throw in an aviator cable to match the build, and your custom mech is done. Let's hear how it sounds. I think you can really hear the difference, and it is much better now. I'm pretty happy with it, and I think if I had some dielectric grease, the stabs would be a lot better. The only thing that is wrong to me is this spacebar with these keycaps. I believe it is because of the keycap set, so I might end up trying something else because this kinda bugs me. If you guys know the issue, please let me know in the comments. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you had any feedback to write it in the comments below. I'm trying something new here and I've never done this before, so if I can improve on something, I'd really like to know. Anyways, thanks for watching, and if you do end up trying this yourself, please let me know how it goes. Also, check the description for more resources about custom keyboards. And well, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day.